In this room, behind this door, stands two women face to face. One is old, short, and more hostile than the other, who is taller, beautiful, and young enough to be her daughter. The air is thick with emotion and hostility. The sound of their voices begin to raise as whatever they're arguing about is becoming more important. The young lady, although hurt due to some kind of betrayal, softly says something to this woman. This makes her become unhinged. The old lady reaches into her purse and in an instant changes the lives and the future generations to come for the worse. Selena Quintanilla Perez, but simply known as Selena, was a beautiful, bold, and daring celebrated singer and fashion designer who became one of the most influential Latin artists of all time. Known for her breathtaking performances, sexy, stylish clothes, and warm, bubbly personality, Selena had a presence that made people fall in love with her. But it was her same loving personality that made her greatly naive. And her naivete and naturally trusting ways helped cause her to lose her life at such a young age. Born on April 16, 1971 in Lake Jackson, Texas, Selena was the youngest child of Marcella and Abraham Quintanilla Jr., a former musician who later became her manager. Her journey from a humble childhood to becoming the queen of Tejano music is a testament to her talent, perseverance, and the deep love she had for her culture. Selena's introduction to music was early and almost inevitable, given her father's background in the music industry. Abraham recognized Selena's potential when she was just 6 years old. By the age of 9, Selena was performing with her siblings, A.B. on bass guitar and Suzette on drums, in a family band called Selena y Los Dinos. Despite facing initial difficulties, including being rejected by some venues due to her young age and the band's unconventional lineup, Selena's talent soon became undeniable. Growing up in a bilingual household, Selena was fluent in English but spoke very little Spanish. Her father, aware of the potential to reach a wider audience, taught her to sing in Spanish. She quickly became proficient, and this allowed her to connect deeply with the Latin community. Her first performances were at small events and venues, but the band's popularity began to grow, particularly in the Texas-Mexico border area. In the 1980s, Tejano music was a predominantly male-dominated genre, but Selena's presence and voice were unmistakable. She brought a fresh and dynamic energy to Tejano music, blending traditional Mexican sounds with contemporary pop and R&B influences. Her first recordings were released under Freddie Records, and while they did not achieve commercial success, they laid the foundation for her future stardom. In 1989, Selena's career took a significant turn when she was signed by EMI Latin, and that same year, she released her self-titled debut album. The album showcased her versatility and featured a mix of ballads, cumbias, and upbeat tracks. Her performances were also becoming legendary, characterized by her powerful voice, charismatic stage presence, and vibrant outfits, which often included custom-made designs. In 1990, Selena's second studio album, Ven Conmigo, featured the hit single Baila Esta Cumbia, which became one of her most popular songs and was a major factor in her growing fame. Her breakthrough, however, came with her 1992 album Entre a mi Mundo, which included the hit single Como la Flor. This song became her signature and solidified her status as a major star in the Latin music scene. Selena was not only a talented singer, but also a fashion icon. She had a deep interest in design, and she often designed her own stage outfits, which included bustiers, fitted pants, and ornate jackets. Her style was a blend of traditional Mexican influences and contemporary fashion, and it resonated strongly with her fans. In 1992, Selena did something very daring and rebellious against her father. She married the secret love of her life, her guitarist Chris Perez. Chris joined Selena's band back in 1989. At first, things between them were strictly professional, but soon feelings between them began to develop. Their relationship began in secrecy because Selena's father, Abraham, would not approve of Chris. He felt Chris was a bad influence on his daughter, whom he was very protective of. Even though Chris was a skilled musician, he led a rough lifestyle, which included partying and lots of drinking. Despite their differences in personality, Selena was outgoing, family-oriented, and disciplined, while Chris was more introverted and rebellious. They quickly developed a strong connection, but Abraham couldn't see that. He just saw someone he felt was interfering with his daughter and her goals as well as the band's success. Because of this, Selena and Chris kept their relationship a secret, sneaking to be together. They even secretly made love for the first time on the band's tour bus. They feared Abraham's reaction, but continued to indulge their forbidden love. Eventually, Abraham did find out about their relationship, and he was furious. In a heated confrontation, Abraham fired Chris from the band and tried to keep the couple apart. However, this only strengthened Selena and Chris's relationship and desire to be together. On April 2nd, 1992, they eloped. And even though Selena was just 20 years old, although nervous, she was determined to be with Chris. They knew that eloping would hurt her family, especially her father, but they hoped they could eventually win his approval. After their marriage became public, Abraham eventually accepted their relationship, and Chris was allowed back into the band. Despite their young age, they were deeply in love. Chris later described their marriage as happy and filled with love. They shared a home in Corpus Christi, Texas, and Selena dreamed of having children. While Selena's success continued to grow, Chris supported her every step of the way, always by her side during performances and in the studio. In 1994, Selena launched her own clothing line and opened 2 boutiques, Selena Etc., in Corpus Christi and San Antonio, Texas. These boutiques featured her clothing designs and offered salon services. Her fashion line was another reflection of her creativity and entrepreneurial spirit. And as successful as this young woman was, things were only getting better for her. In 1994, Selena released Amor Prohibido, which would become one of the best-selling Latin albums of all time. The album produced several hit singles, including Biddy, Biddy, Bum, Bum, No Me Queda Mas, and the title track, Amor Prohibido. The album explored themes of love, heartache, and longing, resonating deeply with audiences. The same year, Selena achieved another milestone in her career when she won the Grammy Award for Best Mexican American Album for her live album, Selena Live. This was a historic win as she became the first Tejano artist to receive a Grammy. Her success continued to soar, and she was poised to become an even bigger star. But unfortunately, as the saying goes, what goes up must come down. And all this prosperity and success would soon be coming to a tragic end much, much too soon. Now that we've discussed all the tremendous things that Selena had done in her short yet brilliant life, let's see what can happen when you allow the wrong people to come into your life. From Selena, the iconic success, to Selena, a cautionary tale. In 1991, Yolanda Saldívar, a former nurse, reached out to Selena and her family inquiring to be head of a Selena fan club. Thinking this short little seemingly warm woman was a good asset for the Selena brand, they hired her. Then in 1994, the Quintanilla family hired Yolanda Saldívar as the manager of Selena's clothing boutiques. 8 months later, Selena hired Yolanda to be her registered agent and assistant in San Antonio, Texas. After this, Yolanda moved from San Antonio to Corpus Christi to be closer to Selena, a big mistake. In almost no time, things began to go very wrong. In December of 1994, the boutiques began to suffer after the number of staff for both stores had begun to decrease. According to staff members, Yolanda often dismissed employees she didn't like. Employees at the stores regularly complained about Yolanda's behavior to Selena, but Selena, who was extremely overly trusting and kind of naive, dismissed the claims, believing that Yolanda would never intentionally make bad decisions on her fashion ventures. According to Selena's father, Abraham, the staff later turned their attention to him and began informing him about Yolanda's behavior. Abraham took their claims very seriously and he told Selena to be careful and said Yolanda might not be a good influence or good for her business. Once again, Selena dismissed her father's concerns because he'd often distrusted many people in the past, and she felt he was just being paranoid and overprotective. By January of 1995, Selena's fashion designer and friend Martin Gomez, her cousin Deborah Ramirez, and clients had expressed their concerns over Yolanda's behavior and management skills. They also noticed that she was becoming overwhelmingly obsessed with Selena. According to Abraham, in January 1995, he began receiving phone calls from fans who said they had paid for memberships to the Selena fan club and had received nothing in return for it, so he began to investigate. Abraham discovered that Yolanda had been embezzling more than $30,000 via forged checks from both the fan club and Selena's boutiques. Rightfully pissed off, Abraham held a meeting with Selena and sister Suzette on the night of March 9th at Q Productions to confront Yolanda about these illegal activities. Abraham presented Yolanda with the inconsistencies about the disappeared funds. Abraham told her that if she did not provide evidence that proved her innocence, he would involve the police. Abraham also banned Yolanda from having any more contact with Selena. However, Selena did not want to end their friendship. She thought Yolanda was essential to her clothing line in Mexico. Selena also wanted to keep her close because she had bank records, statements, and financial records necessary for her tax preparation. As toxic as this situation was, for whatever reason, Selena wanted to keep Yolanda around. According to the documentary Selena and Yolanda, after the meeting with Abraham about the thievery, Yolanda alleges that she served Selena and Chris with a letter of resignation through her lawyers. She was going to quit, but she also basically claims that it was Selena that didn't want her to leave. It seems the thought of losing Selena was too much for Yolanda, and Selena equally seemed to not want to let go for whatever reasons. What could have been this reason that Selena wanted to keep their friendship in order? After all, Selena was 23 years old and Yolanda was 34. That's a pretty big age gap between the ladies, and many would wonder, what could they have possibly had in common? Well, if you believe the words that come out of Yolanda's mouth, it's because she knew of some devastating secrets that Selena was holding. According to Yolanda, she and Selena used to travel to Monterrey, Mexico often, and many thought that these were just innocent business trips to focus on her clothing boutique out there. But Yolanda claims that these trips weren't so innocent. Yolanda claims that they took these frequent trips to Mexico because Selena was cheating on her husband Chris and having an affair with a plastic surgeon by the name of Dr. Ricardo Martinez. In 2012, during an interview with the TV program Primer Impacto, Dr. Ricardo Martinez claimed that a love existed between him and Selena. And according to a translation of the interview featured in the documentary Selena and Yolanda, he said, "Even though it was short, we gave ourselves to each other completely." Now, can this be true? Who really knows? But Selena's father took to his Facebook page to say this about the accusation. It is definitely not a true story, since it is based on falsehoods that, although they are scandalous and sell, also hurt and tarnish the name of an innocent person who can no longer defend themselves. Yolanda even made claims that Selena was a lesbian. Now, can it be that it was actually Yolanda who had lesbian feelings for Selena and projected those feelings onto her, hoping that she and Selena would actually be together romantically? After all, she had a shrine of Selena all through her home, but only Yolanda truly knows that, and she'd probably never reveal that. And as far as embezzling the money from the fan club, Yolanda claims that it was Selena who told her to write checks in Yolanda's name so that she could purchase plane tickets in secret for Selena to visit Dr. Ricardo Martinez. Yolanda says that she helped Selena to cover up her affair to protect her reputation, but the sentiment is that she felt bad about this because she knew Selena's husband, Chris. The producers of the documentary said that they could not substantiate these claims, and I definitely say to take anything Yolanda says with a grain of salt. Anyway, these were the supposed secrets she had on Selena, and claims that she wanted to be done with the Quintanilla family. But this couldn't be further than the truth. because Yolanda claims that she genuinely felt terrified of Abraham and what he'd do to her because of these embezzlement accusations. She did several very unsettling things that Abraham believes was to intentionally harm Selena. Abraham claims there were at least 4 attempts to delete Selena before she actually became successful. The beginning of the downfall was the day after Yolanda's meeting with Abraham on March 9th. She bought a gun. March 10th, she purchased a gun at a gun shop and shooting range called A Place to Shoot in San Antonio, Texas. She bought a Taurus Model 85 snub-nosed 38 caliber revolver and 38 caliber hollow point bullets. These bullets were specifically designed to cause more extensive injuries than normal bullets. Yolanda lied and told the store clerk she needed protection in her job as an in-home nurse because a patient's relatives had been threatening her. On March 13th, Yolanda went to her lawyer and wrote her resignation. Abraham believed this was going to be used as her alibi, because that same day, Yolanda drove to Corpus Christi from San Antonio and checked into the Sand and Sea Motel. She was trying to get in touch with Selena to set up a meeting with her to meet there, but Selena was in Miami, Florida at the time. Abraham believed this would have been the first attempt to kill Selena. Unfortunately, Selena refused to stop being friends with her, and the two would have secret meetings with each other. On March 14th, during one of these secret meetings, Yolanda seemed determined to get Selena alone. When Selena arrived back in Corpus Christi that day, Yolanda contacted her to schedule a meeting. She told Selena there was too much traffic and asked her to meet her at a parking lot 25 miles away from Corpus Christi. She was seemingly attempting to lure her as far away from home as possible. Selena agreed and the two met up. While they were alone in that parking lot, Yolanda actually pulled the gun that she purchased out on Selena. This shocked Selena, but Yolanda quickly stated that she only had this for protection. Protection from some unknown assailant she felt was after her. Assailants that she felt Abraham were sending to harm her. Calmer, Selena said, get rid of it, and made Yolanda promise to never play with that gun again. She also told Yolanda that she'd protect her from her father. And to further appease her, she also told Yolanda that she could still work for her and remain in charge of her business affairs in Mexico. In hindsight, Abraham believed that Selena telling Yolanda this calmed her down and is the only reason she didn't kill Selena in that parking lot. Later on that day, Selena told Chris about Yolanda pulling the gun out, and he told her he didn't want her to be alone with her again. In his book, To Selena with Love, Chris says that he carries a certain sense of guilt about not telling anyone about Yolanda's gun. He says, what if I had told the police? Or Abraham? Who knows how Abraham would have reacted? Maybe he would have called in a favor with the police and had them scare Yolanda, and it would have been over. I still live with those questions. The next day, as instructed by Selena, Yolanda returned the gun to the shop, lying once again to the clerk by saying her father had given her a .22 caliber pistol instead. But Yolanda continued to do more shady things to her supposed best friend, because on March 26th, Yolanda stole perfume samples and more bank statements from Selena in Mexico. And although Yolanda accompanied Selena on a trip to Tennessee while Selena finished recording a song for her crossover album, Selena told Yolanda that she noticed that some bank statements were missing and asked her to return them as soon as they returned to Texas. Maybe Yolanda could sense Selena becoming wary of her and her behavior. Maybe she could sense that Selena was actually starting to listen to everyone who'd been warning her about her. Yolanda now was starting to become what seemed desperate, because on March 27th, Yolanda repurchased the gun she had before, the one that does extensive damage. She then called Selena to come meet her alone at a motel room. When Selena arrived at the motel, the news of Selena's arrival spread quickly, and soon a mob of fans excitedly crowded around her. Once again, Abraham believed this was Yolanda's second attempt to take Selena's life, and he believes her fans saved her that day. There were just too many witnesses. On March 29th, according to Abraham, the third attempt to kill Selena was during Yolanda's trip to Monterrey during the last week of March. Dr. Martinez received phone calls from Yolanda crying hysterically and saying she had been R-worded. The next day, Yolanda called doctor. Martinez again, who said the calls sounded as though someone was trying to snatch the telephone away from her. He sent an employee to Yolanda's motel room to investigate the situation, but when the employee arrived, they found she had left a few minutes earlier. On March 30th, 1995, Yolanda returned from her Monterey trip and checked into a Days Inn motel. She contacted Selena and told her that she had been R-worded. According to Abraham, this was the last message that they received from Yolanda, and in hindsight, he believed this claim was her new alibi to lure Selena in. That same night, during their visit at the Days Inn motel with Yolanda, Selena and Chris went to check out Yolanda and hear her story of her assault. They were also there to retrieve the financial papers and bank statements from her. Selena went inside to talk to Yolanda about her assault and had Chris wait outside by the truck. After their conversation, Yolanda handed over the paperwork Selena needed, and Selena left with Chris. This is the final picture of Selena alive that night, and this shows her and Chris paying bills and trying to prepare for tax season. Her father-in-law snapped this picture of her. While searching through the documents, Selena noticed that Yolanda only gave them back some of the paperwork. Selena noticed she hadn't returned everything they needed. April was coming soon, and she needed her paperwork before tax season ended. She had to go back. Plus, Yolanda kept trying to reach Selena through her pager, asking her to, please, take her to the hospital because she was bleeding so bad from her assault. This should have been a huge red flag amongst the many others then. But Selena, always wanting to see the good in people still for whatever reason, put her trust in Yolanda and kept her around, wanting to help her. Selena wanted to go back to Yolanda to get her to the hospital as well as retrieve the paperwork, but Chris said no, and that it was too late. That he didn't want her to go out alone. They had to approach her together. If only she'd listened to her husband. In the morning of March 31st, Chris was awakened by the startling sound of Selena screaming. He jolted awake to find that she was fully dressed and preparing to leave. Her scream turned into laughter because she'd been startled by Chris's father, who was standing in the hallway. Her father-in-law had been visiting with them for a while. Chris, checking to see if she was okay, Selena reassured him everything was fine, and they all laughed it off. Chris, noticing that she was getting ready to leave the house, didn't want her to go, but Selena, seeing how sleepy he was, told him to go back to sleep and that she'd be right back. She even let him know that she was taking his truck. Very groggy and tired, he went back to sleep. What Chris didn't know was that Selena was headed to the Days Inn motel to meet with Yolanda and to retrieve the much-needed documents. Selena went to room 158 where Yolanda was. In the motel room, Selena demanded the paperwork. Yolanda intentionally delayed handing over the papers after suddenly claiming that she was still bleeding and needed to go to the hospital. Being a good friend and believing her, Selena decided to take Yolanda to the hospital to get checked out. The two appeared at Doctors Regional Hospital that morning. During the visit, Yolanda was given a brief physical examination by a doctor, but this did not include a gynecological exam specifically done in cases of sexual assault. It was suggested by Nurse Carla Anthony that due to Texas laws, Yolanda needed to have a R-word exam done in San Antonio, because that's where she was a resident, and because the assault supposedly happened in Mexico. This was out of their jurisdiction. So because they didn't do a R-word kit exam on Yolanda, therefore it's never been determined if she was in fact assaulted or not. Nurses also noticed that Yolanda appeared depressed. She then told the doctor that she was only bleeding a little bit. This pissed Selena off, because since the night before, Yolanda had been crying about how much blood was pouring from her. Now once again she was caught in a lie. The doctors saw no signs of R-word and decided to release the two women. While they were driving back to the motel, Selena supposedly told Yolanda it would be best if they stayed apart for a while to avoid upsetting her father. It seems she was still trying to keep her calm and close enough to retrieve those papers, because earlier that day she'd told some of the boutique employees that she was going to fire Yolanda. And she assured the curator of the perfume that Yolanda stole from her that she'd get them back as well as get rid of her. Selena was trying to stick it out with Yolanda long enough to get back what she needed, but too many horrible things were happening at once, and she could no longer trust her. Also, for whatever reason that morning, Selena attempted to contact Dr. Martinez, according to him, but he couldn't speak on the telephone because he was performing surgery. He would always wonder why she was reaching out to him that morning. Then at 10 a.m., while on their way back to the motel, Abraham contacted Chris to find out where Selena was. Selena was supposed to be at the recording studio working on a new song for her crossover album she was working on. Chris called Selena on her cell phone to see where she was and to remind her of her scheduled recording session. Selena told him she'd forgotten about the session and that she was taking care of one last item of business and would be at the studio as soon as she was done. This was the very last phone call that Selena answered, and this was the last time Chris would ever hear her voice. Once back inside the motel room 158, Selena and Yolanda began arguing. Witnesses and motel guests complained about loud noises coming from Yolanda's room. They said they heard two women arguing about what seemed to be business matters. Selena told Yolanda that she could no longer trust her and demanded that she return her financial documents. Then, Selena dumped Yolanda's satchel containing the bank statements onto the bed, and that's when she saw the gun. At 11:48 a.m., Yolanda pointed the gun at Selena. As Selena tried to flee from the room, Yolanda shot her once and the bullet entered on her lower right shoulder, severing an artery and causing a massive loss of blood. Critically wounded, Selena ran toward the lobby, leaving a trail of blood 392 feet long. She was seen clutching her chest and screaming, "Help me! Help me! I've been shot!" A witness claims that Yolanda was still chasing after Selena, pointing the gun at her and calling her a bitch. According to eyewitness Carlos Morales, who was waiting outside the motel, he heard screaming and saw Selena running towards him. She grabbed Carlos and screamed, "They'll shoot me again." At 11:49 a.m., Selena collapsed on the floor as the hotel general manager Barbara Schultz called the paramedics. Selena identified Yolanda as her assailant and gave the number of the room where she had been shot. As the motel staff members tried to stop the flow of blood, Selena's condition began to deteriorate rapidly. She was able to say the words, "Yolanda Saldívar, room 158. Selena cried out to the staff, telling them, "Lock the door, she'll shoot me again." The manager tried to talk to Selena to keep her calm, but he noticed that she was beginning to lose consciousness. He said Selena was moaning and moving less now. He noticed Selena's eyes had rolled back and that she went limp. The paramedics came fast. They arrived at the scene in 1 minute and 55 seconds. The paramedics tore away the green sweater where the bleeding was taking place and applied a Vaseline gauze to Selena's wound, which stopped the surface bleeding. But as fast as they arrived, the paramedics quickly realized that it was too late. Selena's heartbeat was now very slow. A paramedic performed CPR to keep her blood circulating, but they found a thick pool of blood from her neck to her knees, all the way around on both sides of her body. They could not find a pulse, and when he placed his fingers on Selena's neck, he felt only muscle twitches. A paramedic tried inserting an IV needle into Selena, but her veins had collapsed because of the massive loss of blood and low or no blood pressure, making the insertion extremely difficult. The local police closed off the streets and the motel. It was officially a crime scene. When paramedics delivered Selena to Corpus Christi Memorial Hospital at 12 p.m., Selena's pupils were fixed and dilated. There was no evidence of neurological function, and she no longer had vital signs. According to the Selena Wiki, doctors were able to establish an erratic heartbeat long enough to transfer Selena to the trauma room. Doctors began blood transfusions in an attempt to reestablish blood circulation after opening Selena's chest and finding massive internal bleeding. Her right lung was damaged, her collarbone was shattered, and her veins were emptied of blood. But all of this would be to no avail because all the 6 units of blood transfusions they were doing were leaking out due to the pencil-sized artery leading from the heart that had been cut in two by the hollow point bullet and was spilling out from Selena's circulatory system. After 50 minutes of doing all they could to help Selena, the doctors realized that the damage was irreparable. At 1:05 p.m., Selena was pronounced dead from blood loss and cardiac arrest. The saddest part of this is that doctors said that if the bullet had been only 1 millimeter higher or lower, the wound would have been less severe. She could have actually survived. After the shooting, Yolanda tried to escape. She entered her red 1994 GMC pickup truck and tried to leave the motel parking lot. A police officer who saw her left his vehicle, drew his gun, and ordered her out of the truck, but Yolanda did not comply. Her truck was blocked in by the police vehicle. Yolanda picked up her pistol, pointed it at her right temple, and threatened to self-delete. This was the beginning of a 9-hour standoff. The police drained the gasoline from the gas tank of Yolanda's truck and turned on floodlights. By the 4th hour, an officer succeeded in getting Yolanda to confess that she had intended to shoot herself. Yolanda, crying, tried to say what actually happened in that room. She stated that it was always her intention of deleting herself in front of Selena, and when she placed the gun to her own head, Selena begged her not to off herself. When Selena opened the door to leave, Yolanda said she told her to close it, and that's when the gun went off. During the 6th hour of the standoff, Yolanda agreed to give herself up, but when she saw a police officer pointing a rifle at her, she panicked and ran back to her truck. She picked up the revolver and pointed it at her head again. After more than 9 hours, Yolanda finally surrendered to the authorities. By then, hundreds of Selena's fans had gathered at the scene, and many cried and booed as police took Yolanda away. Selena's funeral was attended by thousands of fans, and her death was widely mourned. In the years following her passing, her legacy continued to grow. Her posthumous album, Dreaming of You, was released a few months after her passing. It was partly recorded in English, debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, making Selena the first Latin artist to achieve this feat. The album was a mix of English pop songs and Spanish ballads, showcasing her crossover potential and further cementing her place in music history. Her music continues to be celebrated by many races and cultures, and her story has inspired countless documentaries, books, and the 1997 biographical film Selena, starring Jennifer Lopez, which introduced her to a new generation of fans. Next year, 2025, marks the 30th anniversary of Selena's departure from this earth. This will also be the year Yolanda will also be up for parole. After she took away such an essential figure, it would be very upsetting to many of Selena's family and fans, but we shall see. At only 23 years old, Selena remains an unforgettable figure in the world of music and beyond, her legacy defined by her extraordinary talent, her boundless love for her fans, and her role as a pioneering force in the Latin music industry. Her story is one of brilliance and promise, cut tragically short, but forever etched in the hearts of millions around the world. So lurkers, what do you think about Yolanda being up for parole next year? Do you think one should be forgiven after serving time for committing a permanent crime? Do you think she was telling the truth about Selena's supposed affair with the doctor? Let me know down below.